Okay, so good morning. Apologies for the bemused face to begin with. We started with a few tech problems, but I'd just like to welcome everybody this morning that has come to attend this. I'm not sure what number UNIfy event it is, but today's event is as the panel, as the slide shows, is looking at heritage months and the importance of making sure that they're part of the full year calendar and not just a one-off event within the year. I'm Rich Warburton, and I'm the Artistic Director of Theatre in the Mill, which is the theatre based at the University of Bradford, and we're an arts organisation that's committed to developing, supporting and presenting socially responsible art and forms. And by that I mean basically we just prioritise art, ideas and research that has a benefit to society at large. We're based at the University of Bradford, and I will be doing my best, Techies aside, to try and host this morning's panel event. I think everyone else that's here alongside me is terrified I'm just going to drop out. As I said, the purpose of this discussion is to consider the purpose, the contribution intentions of campaigns months, weeks, or even just days, and what this means for institutions year round. How do we avoid tokenism, and who is really benefiting from these initiatives? There are now a number of heritage months celebrated in the UK. Black History Month began in the US in 1969, and that was proposed by academics and Black students from Kent State University. But the first Black History Month celebrated in the UK wasn't until 1987, and that was celebrated as part of African Jubilee Year. Most recently, South Asian Heritage Month was launched in July 2019, and there have been multiple other heritage months launched in between, especially LGBT plus month, History Month, and Disability History Month. But there are many more, and most, or at least many of these, are now adopted as part of an institution's or organisation's calendar. But the question we're sort of asking today is, what does this mean to the organisation's commitment year round? Do they provide a catalyst to a similar commitment across the 11 months, or are they in danger of encouraging a short-term tokenistic approach that has actually little meaning outside the month? Who is it for, and who is it benefiting? Now, here to begin this conversation around, I am very gratefully, I am joined by Professor Udi Archibong, who's the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion and Professor of Diversity here at the University of Bradford. Pauline Mayers, who is a renowned multidisciplinary theatre maker. Nick Greenham, who is the lead for cultural partnerships for Bradford City Council, and Inshal Ahmed, who is the communities and activities officer for the student union here at the university. They all come with very unique perspectives, which I think are going to be really great for this conversation. I think, just to add some last words, I think it's fair to say that we are right now still within a maelstrom of change, and that behind us, and I suppose still in front of us, is a year that has affected how we all approach the world, including these organisations. None of us, I don't think, know what our immediate and long-term future looks like, what landscape we're about to step back into. But I think we are going to see a profound shift in how institutions will need to actually honestly engage with the world around them. I think more than ever, any sort of performed allegiance or allyship is going to be called out. And if institutions are posting black or rainbow squares in their social media, or are foregrounding photos of individuals that represent a certain demographic, then if that is just smoke and mirrors, then they're going to be called out on it. And it's probably going to be quite a damaging fallout, and quite rightly so. So we'll be looking at that commitment, that intention through this discussion. We're going to close it. We're going to try and leave the last 20 minutes of discussion, maybe more or less, depending on what's coming through, with a Q&A, which will be based on the questions proposed by any of the attendees in the chat. So if you do have any questions, please do use the Q&A function on this webinar, and we'll be monitoring it through, and then we'll be answering some of those questions at the end. But if it's okay, I'm gonna jump in now and throw this out to our panelists. And if it's okay, I'm going to begin with you, Udi. So Udi provides the leadership and strategic oversight of the university's equality, diversity and inclusion agenda. And I think it's right to say that you ensure effective engagement and collaboration with all the faculties and professional services to really drive forward the university's ambitious aspirations and high standards for EDI. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about your role before answering this question, but what I'm going to ask you straight off the bat is how do these, or how can these heritage months support your aims or the department's aims or overall strategy?
Thank you very much, Richard, for that. And hello, everybody. I think I want to just follow that and start with something that might seem like a joke, but it is real, because you started off by listing some of the legacy months. I call them legacy months because I think it should leave a lasting legacy throughout the year rather than one-offs. So I'm reminded of a situation where I think it was in about 2007 or thereabouts, in New York, Jill Scott Heron complained that the designation of February as Black History Month, because that's the International Black History Month, the original Black History Month in the UK, ours here is celebrated in October. So Jill Scott said something like, having been oppressed as Black people over centuries through slavery and exploitation, the system now conspires to cut short Black people's heritage celebrations by consigning them to the shortest months of the year. And if you really think about that, this might seem like Scott was half serious, or we might begin to think, well, was that a joke? But it was just the beginnings and the skepticism that we hear about the tokenistic nature of minority months. So every time I remember History Months, I got so reminded about this. And I think Jill was right, because sometimes it could be that we're limiting it to a particular period and therefore there are issues. But I just want to say that these recognition months and religious festivals have really evolved over time. And one of the key things that we want to remember is that if we do it right during the consultation in planning these events, we also consider approaches that will help us to think more broadly, to work beyond the performative acts of the mere celebration of these events. We in Bradford University, we operate throughout the year, we research, we network, and we look at these events as opportunity to promote one big thing, that big thing being giving people a sense of belonging. Because I think if we don't really look at opportunities for dialogue in championing, in celebrating and looking at strategies for engaging people in our EDI work, in being part of our organization, we are definitely missing a massive boat. So while these concepts of historical months exist, I think for me, by way of driving performance around EDI, what it does is it gives me an opportunity to stop and reflect with colleagues. And that is an opportunity for me and us to think through how we must not make it a one-off. So the reality is that, yes, there are constraints. Yes, there are, the people might want to make it tokenistic, but it is the intentionality that we bring into the planning, the celebrations of these history months that will help us in driving our way forward. And I want to remind us and repeat that if you don't feel you belong, to the work that you do, if you don't feel that you can bring your whole self to the work that you do, or you're learning as a student or a client or whatever interactions you have with an organization, you have no business even being there. So this for me is a part of rather than the whole picture. So it's a part of promoting that belonging. And it does help me personally in how I'm thinking about our EDI strategy, how it informs the university, how I recognize the visibility of the people that these history months have been set up to celebrate. So by way of strategy, the key things is the visibility, the opportunity to, I think the opportunity to just stop and check, reflect, is the opportunity to actually address those challenges that people, in fact, even during the planning and the implementation of the history months, can contribute in making EDI a sustained activity within our organizations.
That's a very great way to, I think, start this off. I'm gonna go straight back to you there, Edie, with I suppose a second question on that, which is there, how is your role as the lead ambassador for the university? How are you able, therefore, then to engage with maybe other key partners or communities and stakeholders to ensure that these campaigns aren't just tokenistic?
Yeah, I mean, that for me is a very big one, though, because I think I've already alluded to the intentionality to make sure that it is not tokenistic. And obviously, I'm sure that we do not always get this right. And we've got to be very honest. One of the things that I've learned during this COVID period is the notion of actually accepting that we do get it wrong, we can get it wrong, and that we may not get it all right, and we learn through the process. So to not make it tokenistic for me is about ensuring that delivering real change does not see these as the end in themselves. That these are, for me, the beginning of a journey of true engagement. I am certain that the only way we can deliver real change is even if we were to look at this as that beginning performative act, and that there is a way after that, and that we chart that way after that, and engage in negotiating the way after the history month. So we see the history month as something that starts and takes us into the next level, which moves from performative acts. Sometimes people think it's all negative to have those performative actions. I believe that it's always a good starting point, because you need to really employ something that I would see as, in psychological terms, cognitive dissonance, which is if you beat things hard enough, you will beat it into place. Others will join you in beating that things into place. So if we use this as the starting point, and that we move beyond that performative point to a point where we're looking at equity-seeking practices, voicing and centering involvement, promoting critical introspection. For me, the big thing is really having that inclusive environment where people can interact, can do it together. So I'll give you an example. In Bradford now, I chair the Equalities Board. One of the big things that we're doing in Bradford is to promote some of these history months as citywide events. So our LGBT month in February, we had some individual activities within the institution, University of Bradford, for our staff and students, as well as joining in citywide events. And I think by doing that, we will continue to hold each other's hands. And I'm beginning to see that in this history month, we are bringing our chief executive in to account, to say things about how they are personally promoting and setting tones for EDI. So it's a package that we all need to do together. And we must always remember to move from those beginning bits that might seem performative to real actions. And it's about working with leaders, bringing leaders into these history events to also assert their commitment and get asked questions and account for what they're doing to support EDI activities within the organizations. So that's personally what I'm doing, but I'm really pleased to be working with within the city where the commitment is very, very widespread.
Thank you. I agree that I think the focus of this is actually to go, well, if we are looking at this, how do we make something that's positive going forward? But I'm going to get to Pauline next, because well, I'll introduce you first, Pauline. That's all right. So for those that don't know Pauline, which you should, Pauline has you had a dance career before the career you've got now that spanned 15 years, including training at the Rambert School. But then after injury, if I'm correct, you actually became a theatre maker, which is where our paths crossed the first time. And the one that's really interested in reframing spaces and histories, I think, through experimental art and culture. Now, I do know that your credentials and your CV would take the full 45 minutes here. So apologies if I'm not doing you any justice. But most recently, I know that you've been working on an ambitious and exciting collaboration with arts organisations and national heritage buildings, I don't know whether I'm allowed to name them, about unpacking colonial histories for their visitors. And I think foregrounding the bones of these buildings that they're built upon. I think it's fair to say that Black history is UK history in that sense. And I know we've chatted a bit about Black History Month, and you wrote an article, was it called What Black History Month Means to Me, about 2 or 3 years ago. And I think that highlights for me that what we need to be really careful is that how many institutions have used these heritage or legacy months as a small window in which to engage individuals and work in a time-limited manner. And I do think that maybe your experience has been mirrored by many. And it'd be really good if you could just, if it's okay, if you just paint us a little bit of that experience, and then maybe we can unpack how we can not repeat that.
Sure. You mentioned in the introduction that Black History Month in the UK started in 1987, and in 1987 I was in dance training. It didn't actually seem to affect me at that point, even though this was a national directive and program initiated by Bernie Grant, the politician who has since died and done a lot of work within the civil rights movement in the UK. But my first interaction with Black History Month came in 2001, and it was at a point of unemployment. Theatres and venues that I didn't know somehow managed to get my details, and started making inquiries about my availability. And this would often happen sort of around July, August time. And usually it would come with a number of kind of stipulations, which was like, oh, we've got a workshop, could you teach it? Or we've got a group of children, could you make a piece within a day? It was that kind of along those kind of lines. So my sense of that was actually, these are organizations that perhaps I might not be able to get the chance to work with. And perhaps there is a longer term situation that we are thinking about here, that if I work with these organizations on this Black History Month, oftentimes with very little preparation and not very much money, that might build in some way, shape or form. And certainly originally Black History Month was seen as a building block actually to widening the curriculum, national curriculum as you now know it. So I didn't think that there were opportunities that I could actually pass up. However, after around 3 to 4 years and repeated promises of working in a much more sustainable way across the year, and always kind of beginning to realize that actually venues and organizations and institutions were only coming to me kind of like July, August, and everybody knows when Black History Month happens because it happens in October. That's how it's always been set up. But to know that actually it was becoming very tokenistic, there wasn't a sense of building on any of the work that I had been doing. It would very much be a case of, you've done the work 1 year, it gets kind of forgotten about, and then the next year it's like starting all over again. And it began to kind of really signal to me the way that the system kind of attempted to validate itself by saying, here's a Black History Month, this is it, and then not wanting to work. Now, this is obviously just my experience. I'm pretty sure there are other people who might have had better experiences. But I actually stopped working Black History Month maybe mid-noughties because I was really fed up of the tokenism of it. And I didn't really face it again, actually, until I did my own show. I toured my own show in 2001 called What Have I Told You? And unbelievably, the same thing happened yet again. So I have this show. It's about me and my experiences within the dance community. And I was getting offers from venues, literally August, kind of July, August time. Can you come perform in October? And as soon as I said, I'm not doing October, I'm not doing Black History Month, those offers literally disappeared. So, you know, in my own personal experience, what I can say is it has felt extraordinarily tokenistic. And actually, worse than that for me, I have a particular range of talents and skills, and none of those are being used or activated in any way, shape, or form. So I personally have really made it a thing to not work Black History Months.
And I think, you know, if any organisation or institution or venue is intending to adopt Heritage Month, then these are the experiences they need to be listening to and go, well, how are we avoiding that? So, but I'm going to sort of come back with a provocation back to you, boy, which is, how would an organisation or institution be able to interest you in being involved in a Heritage Month? What can they do to demonstrate commitment? How can they reassure you that the same experiences that you've had up until now aren't about to repeat themselves?
I think they're great questions. And of course, I've got quite a fairly succinct answer to each one of those things. Okay. First things first, take an active interest in the work that I'm actually doing, instead of trying to shoehorn me into a set of programs that I might not actually be suitable for. I think that's the first thing. I'm an individual, I'm an artist, I am very different to other people and other artists, and we're not all the same. And I think that kind of homogenistic way of looking at people who are non-white, and in my case, performers, but actually across the sectors, is actually really damaging. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is to approach me at least 6 months before the actual month takes place. I mean, planning anyway can be quite difficult. I personally think it needs to be a bit more than 6 months. And actually talk to me as an individual. Like, the kind of things that I like to do is cross-sector, across disciplines. So the work that I'm doing at the moment is working with historians and academics and researchers, as well as within the arts. And I think it needs a real kind of multidisciplinary approach to any of these Heritage Months, because each part actually makes up the whole picture. So that's something else. I think there's something around legacy, absolutely, and I totally agree with Udi on this. For me, what would indicate an organisation or institution who is doing a Heritage Month kind of actually having a longer term commitment to that. So that means kind of really putting in the resources and the time and the planning to do a range of opportunities and events and activities throughout the year. And I think that's really important. So it's not that it happens once and then it's forgotten about, but actually there is a sense of building. And I think that that can be anywhere between kind of like 3 and 5 years in planning, so that each activity is kind of really embedded into whatever the organization or institution's work is actually doing. So I think that's something else. I think collaboration absolutely is key. The amount of times that I've kind of been called to take part in other people's work without actually having any understanding of what the things that I'm actually interested in. I love panel discussions. I love interviews. I love podcasts. I love actual performances. I love unpicking performances. This is far more than just a performance in and of itself, or a workshop in and of itself. And the final thing I would say is actually pay properly. You know, if we're going to look at individuals as experts, then they need to be paid as that. So I think that, I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does. If we had time, I'd probably go back and have another 4 or 5. But I'm aware that time is ticking on. But I think there's definitely something in there that I'm going to pass on to Nick about, I suppose, the collaborative approach, or the not being done to, but being or done for, but being done with. Now, I and Nick, because before joining the council, you were the co-director of East Street Arts. And I know a lot of the work, especially that you were directly involved in, was community-based, directly in the heart of the community, as it were, going out rather than expecting people to come to. I have to say, I've always been really impressed with the integrity with which all of that community work was approached. And even now, since joining Bradford, like, we're now seeing that. I think we are seeing that in the role that you're at now. And councils in particular, but also all institutions, they often are adopting these heritage months wholesale in some ways, across the counter. Now, I'm also aware that you can't talk and you can only talk on behalf of yourself. I'm not asking you to answer any of these questions as the council, but from your perspective, what should these large institutions be hoping to achieve? What, if they're going to host LGBTQ plus month, Saturday Evening Month, Black History Month, all of these, what are they wanting to get out of it? Where are the priorities, and who's the audience there? There's a lot of questions there, and you don't need to answer them all, but I'm throwing that out there as a first.
Okay, thanks. Can I? The last question, maybe I'll go back to the beginning and just think about kind of sort of, you say that approach, because that's really important in terms of the way that we behave. So my background started off in what is growing up on an estate and setting up a community development organisation when I didn't even know what community development was. All I knew was that the approach was about you work with the expertise locally to develop local solutions. I didn't even know what those words were back then. I just knew to get a group of people that were willing together to start to make things happen from a place of experience and a place of lived experience. So that's kind of sort of where that kind of sort of career started in terms of the approach and process, if you like. And I guess what the biggest shock for me, coming from the kind of community creative art sector into a local authority, because I've never ever worked in a local authority before, never worked in a large institution, in terms of history months, is if I'm going to be completely and utterly honest here, and I guess this is what we're being asked to do, is I never really engaged with them in the way that institutions do. It was always about the DNA and the approach of how of the work that you do, who you're working with, who you're commissioning, who you're talking to, who you're listening to, and what you're saying all year round. So I always looked, and like I said, I'm trying to be honest, I always looked at at various history months and just went, oh, that's interesting over there. But actually, for me, it was always about continual understanding, continual education of me as an individual about various cultures, and not just kind of sort of once a month, here's my opportunity. And if I'm really honest, I haven't engaged with them over the years, and whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But my commitment was I learn every day, not once a month. So when I joined the local authority, and looking at it from an institution perspective, and it's incredibly complex, and everybody understands the breadth and depth of what a local authority has to do. But I guess I'm in a really privileged position, as you know, my topic, what I'm doing, is culture. So this is absolutely this. It's every day. It's not just okay, so what are we doing for Black History Month this month? What are we doing for South Asian History Month? What are we doing for LGBTQ? This is every day for me. This is I'm probably going to use wrong terminology here, but this is our bread and butter. This is who we are. This is about our behavior, about the way that we approach stuff. So it kind of was odd, like all of a sudden it's kind of, right, what are we doing for this? I'm just like, well, we're doing all this all year round. I guess I'm starting to learn that these months of celebration are great for profiling the opportunity, but I personally feel that the work has to happen 365 days of the year, because we need to embrace and understand culture, history, and the complexity and the difficulty that has happened for many cultures across the years. And that for me is a personal commitment, and how I'm approaching the work and the remit that I've got within the council. So I just wanted to share something with you that obviously we're in the middle of we're going to launch shortly our new 10-year culture is our plan. It's not cultural strategy, culture is our plan. And we have 10 ambitions, and one of those ambitions is about Bradford will know itself better. And this process was completely co-created and co-produced with very many, lots of people across the district. And what we're saying is that we will understand and proudly share Bradford's history and diversity of cultural heritage of our people. Our culture will speak honestly and openly, won't tolerate racism or discrimination, and we will have difficult conversations when needed, giving confidence to our communities, celebrating difference, bringing people together, boosting pride, and promoting mental and physical well-being. Now that is a commitment. That's an ambition within our 10-year plan. And I think if we can commit to that and we can stay true to that, then I think we've got. It's not going to be easy, but I think we've just got to hold on to that every day, as far as I'm concerned.
So, I mean, having something to refer to, and I mean, often when I was working, with the arts group, rather than going what we're going to make, we often used to have a lecture about what we're not going to make. What isn't it going to be? And sometimes working out what it isn't is as useful, I think, as working out what it is. And part of what I'm hearing here, I think, which is really, is about, in some ways, it's about a really clear feedback loop. It's about actually knowing, if you're going to be presenting, if you're going to be showing that what you're doing that month, that we can see that it's really clear where the roots of that are over the other 11 months. It shouldn't be hard to find. And whether that means that what we're seeing is something that's the end of a 12-month relationship being celebrated, or clearly a commitment catalyst to the beginning of something, that's, I don't know, maybe that's a good way of looking at it. I'm going to bring in Inshal now. Hi, we spoke yesterday, and this might not be relevant to the conversation, but it's still blown me that I think it's been a really difficult year for I think your role in particular. So Inshal's and tell me if I've got the title wrong. I believe you're the Communities and Activities Officer, and with COVID reshaping this year, that's been a massive impact on how you've been able to communicate and engage with students. And I think you're saying that if the students that are starting next year, third-year students, will only have had really one term on campus. I mean, for those that have been to university, the idea that you go to your third year and you've only had one term on campus, I actually still haven't been able to fit in there. But if we can just, I know this is hard, I think we probably, it's useful we just put the pandemic or COVID to one side and go, from your perspective, what do you see are the opportunities for the Students' Union to be able to use Heritage or Legacy Month like this to engage with the students? And how do you, in your role, approach them so that they avoid being, again, the blip on the calendar?
Thanks, Richard. And yes, sir, first of all, it is Community and Activities Officer at the Students' Union. And hello to everyone on this call today. As you mentioned, Rich, a lot has changed over the past year. I would say that the whole of university experience for the students has just turned around, and it is now this new system of online and blended approach which we are offering to the students at the moment, which is something that we don't like, but it is absolutely necessary to stop the curve of this COVID pandemic that is there. Answer to your question, really, where we talk about these heritage months, I think these are the platform, these heritage months, these provide as a platform to the Students' Union to deliver to the mindset of think globally, act locally, because we as Students' Union believe that we sort of try and excel in this particular area of expertise, because I'd like to think that Students' Union is that catalyst of change within the society that helps people, the students and local community to raise awareness about things, about different things that are happening in our society. Giving an example, I mean, university is a word that comes from the word universe, which means people from different parts of the world are going to come here and study under one roof, learn so many things about different cultures. Now, I have to admit that when I traveled from India to this country, I was ignorant about many facts, many facts, because not because I wasn't keen, but because I didn't have that kind of infrastructure to learn. So I think my transition to this country has made me learn a lot of things, which I'm really proud of. So that's how we so I've been listening to the conversations around how heritage months are also a part of tokenism, which is true. Like, we should never confine to just 1 month to talk about people who suffered in the past. Like we've had Black History Month, we've had Disability History Month, we've had LGBT History Month. So that is all good, but the idea from University Students' Union perspective is because when most of our students are ignorant and we use these months to create awareness, that is the point of these months for us. And I am still completely agreeing on the fact that this is not the right approach, but it has helped the Students' Union in the past, where we use this month to raise awareness at times. I think second answer to the question where you asked that how we make sure that we engage the students is that, and I'm sure Udi will agree to this because we've worked in the past with Udi very closely, and I think the one of the most important and effective steps that we take is keeping students engaged from the very early stage, and that has always worked for the Students' Union and for higher engagement, because when the students feel that there is a sense of belonging in a particular project, they give their 100% to it. And especially during the lockdown, students are, I mean, how do I say this without, yeah, students are bored of emails. So they get emails, like 10, 20 emails every day telling about different events that we're trying to do, we're trying to host, but they don't want it anymore because there's a thing called screen fatigue. And it is true. It is true. Students have faced it. We've got complaints, and we try to move students away from the screens now wherever possible. Uh, but yeah, email. So what we've improvised is we've tried to use social media to promote these events. We try to create a student focused group with 5 or 6 influencing students on campus. So Instagram, I've learned this fact that Instagram is a very powerful tool. Some of the students might have 20,000 followers on Instagram, and I have 110. So you can imagine that what kind of influence these students can have on students in promoting some of the events that we might do, in promoting some of the ideas we might have and we share. So these are the things that we try and use to make sure that the students engage within these heritage history months and give their full contribution. Further, Students' Union also keeps looking to provide incentives to the students who are thinking to get involved with projects like these. And one of our very golden, shiny incentive is Kickstart. Now, Kickstart is a program within Students' Union where students can volunteer and then get an award at the end of their degree or academic year, which makes them more employable because they talk about their experience, what they've done within these things. So I think we are still accommodating for new ideas and how we can engage more students. But yes, that in a nutshell is something that Students' Union is doing and will keep on doing to make sure that we have high engagements for these Heritage History Months, which we believe are necessary and very important to make sure that everyone is aware, because sometimes we forget that we living in first world countries are privileged to have internet, to have access to so many books, to so many things that we take things for granted that yes, we know about these things. But I wouldn't say that back in 2016 I knew about everything. So I think to put spotlight on a particular month for these for some of the topics that we have is has helped in the past. But yet again, I would say that it, as Nicola mentioned, that it is all about ambition that we're talking about. So it is actually all about that. And with that, I rest my case. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Back to Rich.
Thank you. I think there are some questions in the Q&A. Before I start to ask any of the panelists if they've got any that they'd like to answer themselves, I think I'm going to sort of just ask one last question to everyone here that anyone can sort of chip in on, which is what if we're going to go forward, what are the tips, or what do you think might be the best approach to that first thing to go to ensure that it's embedded throughout the year? What, if there's other institutions or organizations listening, and you had one piece of advice to them about making sure it's embedded in the last year, is there anything practical as advice that you could offer there? And I'm throwing that out to anyone.
Can I quickly add something onto that, Richard, please?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so I've mentioned how these heritage months are sometimes in spotlight, but what Students' Union try to do is we provide equal representation to each and every groups of societies that we have on campus. So having said that, I would say that there are different job, non-paid, voluntary job roles within the Students' Union, where we try and promote BAME officer, we try and promote LGBT officer, we try and promote I can't think of names on top of my head right now, but there are plenty of volunteering opportunities which provide representation to the students who belong to these particular communities. Like myself, I'm a minority, I'm from a part of a minority group, and I feel proud to see someone who shares the same feelings, sentiments, is out there at top level representing and rooting for me and people like me. So that is something that the Students' Union does to make sure that there is representation and there is talks going around important topics around the year. So and that is something that I'm very proud of. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, from personally, representation I think is just so important across, and especially with my cultural hat on. Again, if you're not seeing yourselves represented on the stage, if your lives aren't there, then there's a real issue. And I suppose what we're looking at today is actually how do we make sure that the only time you're represented isn't within the month that you might have been identified within. Is there any other response to that before I'm going to throw in some questions? Udi, I think that was a hand.
Yeah, I guess I want to completely reiterate the point that if you set these as the only activities you're doing towards resolving the challenges that we have in our institutions related to EDI, then it's a complete nonsense. What we need to know is that we need different tools, different activities to take us to where we want to. But that has to link in with a strategic direction. So we must have something that allows us to then identify different pieces of the jigsaw that will come together to do things right for us. And I know when Pauline was talking, I was nodding about the intersectional approach. I think we need to challenge ourselves. I mean, I'm one person that will continue to see this as a way of getting this agenda done, or part of getting this agenda done. But what we need to do is that for every legacy month that you're celebrating, you have to sit together and ask yourself, what are the intersectional aspects? Because I always say to people, if you start from January to December, you will celebrate something per month. But in celebrating that thing, yeah, Black History Month, where are the trans inclusion aspects that you build into Black History Month? Where are the gender issues that you build into Disability History Month? By doing it that way, then you have a month where you shine light on a particular thing, but that particular thing is also viewed through lenses of other things. And by doing it that way, you spread it, but it has to be anchored by a strategic direction. Something has to hold them together. So you can also look at other pieces of the jigsaw that will come together to create an environment that is inclusive, that we feel we belong, that we can give our best.
I think that is that's a really good point. Like, I mean, that's such vital as that, again, that intersectionality. But again, you know, we're thinking across the calendar of the year that if we look at each one of those legacy months as a way to show a genuine commitment across the board, then yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I've been a little bit like Nick Green in the past, that when the heritage months have come up, I've had a gut reaction of, oh, it's just another, this tokenism. And actually, if we try and center all of those voices all year round, but actually taking that on board, really, and I was hoping that I'd come to my own conclusion, but I think when we look at our calendar for the next year from a theory in the mill point of view, as part of a larger institution, then it is something that I think we'll probably really readdress. But with that, right, really at the fact of that intersectionality of how we present those months. There are a few questions, and we are running out of time. So I think I've got some indication on my ropey internet here of who might be able to take one. So I'm going to start with you, Nick, and I hope I'm giving you the right question. But there's a question on here that's this month of April 2021 is a significant month, which comes in a lifetime. Easter, Passover, Holy Vasaki, Ramadan being celebrated in the same month. What practical actions were taken by institutions to celebrate, engage, involve faith communities in this so-called diverse Bradford and district? I hope that's the question you're all right to take, Nick.
I am. There's another one at the end that's very direct to me as well. So I don't know whether I want to combine the both. That might be useful.
Yeah, sure. Is that with a shared industrial history in Bradford?
No, it's about.
Yeah.
It's right. It's right at the end, but it's all right. I'll
okay.
Do it. I guess I mean, this is all about, you know, there's practicalities here of actually making things happen rather than, you know, I read out the statement, but actually you've got to take the statements and you've got to put them into practice, haven't you? And I think the more that we can create easier ways for communication, one, how we support, I mean, so within my gift, I have the ability to provide grants of support to make activity happen. And one of the things that we've been doing, we've been working with the National Heritage Lottery Fund, because what we found out was that there was a very low uptake of applications to the National Heritage Lottery Fund from the district, and especially from our more diverse communities. And there's a number of reasons of why that is the case. But actually, rather than just saying that is the case and there's not a lot we can do about it, we've been working with them to say, well, actually, your process is really complex, our process is really complex. Can we come together and make something that's simpler, more accessible, and actually speaks to and sounds like it's available for more than what it's currently in terms of its communication? So one of the ideas is that we would look, and this hasn't happened yet, we're talking about it. Could we create a kind of devolved funding pot that takes away some of the bureaucracy, that enables events, activities, the opportunity to tell stories, to capture imagination, to be able to communicate people's history through culture? And can we find an easier way for us to do this that enables to change that percentage of who is applying and who is being successful? And the bit that we need to recognise around that is the work that needs to go to support that. It's not good enough just putting out a grant application and it being easier and more and friendlier. Actually, there's a whole wave of work that needs to happen to support people to be able to feel confident, to be able to even open up an application, start one, to get resources, to be able to deliver something within their community that that represents their culture. So, you know, it comes down to practicalities. We need to make changes. We need to have different conversations. We need to think about the communication, the language that we use, and who we're supporting, and the processes that we put in place to shift the imbalance of what and who is getting supported across the district.
Right. I mean, that's a great answer.
I'll just quickly go on the kind of sort of, am I going to be around for the next 10 years? Probably not. And actually, the way I've worked is I've started every project I've ever done with an exit strategy. And the exit strategy is I should become redundant. I should not be useful. And actually, the idea of doing this culture, the culture is our plan, as a co-produced piece of work, is it shouldn't be about me. It should never be about me. And you know, and the council should be act as a facilitator, not a deliverer in that way. So sorry.
No, great. I'm aware of our time now. We're coming to. I'm going to give time for one last question to be answered. If anybody, if any of the panelists there, the one that they've seen that they'd like to answer, just let me know, and we will go for that one. Otherwise, we'll round up.
Yeah, can I just take the question from Manoj, because I can really sense, and I think I personally share that frustration. But we do really need to come with hope, though. I used to be very, very pessimistic, and it could really get you down when you hear the kinds of stories. And this one that Manoj has just put up is a very painful one. And what I would like to reassure people is that we've seen something in the world around us where people are not keeping quiet anymore. I think we are empowering ourselves to shout out more. And I would really like for this particular example that you've given here, Manoj, to be taken up, because we do need to call out these. This is a very overt one, you know, where an Asian person rings up an estate agent and things are not happening, and somebody else, it is overt, and we need to call it out. So I'm more than happy to speak to you behind the scenes and see how we can do this. But let me say something. The dilemma we have, that it appears work is continuing to be in progress is, I say to people that the context of discrimination changes every minute. And I don't think we will ever get to a point where we can all jump and shout that we've arrived. And this is why some of us frowned at the Sewell report, because it seemed to give the impression that we are in a post-discriminatory, post-racial world where things are not exactly what we all feel. And so I guess one of the things I want to tell you is that work in progress is not really a bad place to be for me, it shows that we are re-examining, reassessing, re-looking at stuff. But we are now at a prime moment where we need to hold to account. We need to really call out this estate agent. We need to be able to ask questions and report where report needs to, and we need to follow up. So I don't think I've given you the kind of answer that will settle you, but if you just remember that work in progress is not necessarily a bad thing, because work in progress shows that we are reassessing and we are also being able to shout out about things more. That's the world that we live in. When you see what's happening around, I think COVID for me has really exposed where we are and why people are now saying, sorry, we're not going to keep quiet about it. And this is an indication that we must call to account. We must all ring up and follow up and check out why this kind of overt racism is still going on. It is going on here.
And I get to see Udi's calendar by my work, and I know how busy it is. And I suspect that beat from hers as well was saying that she needs to get to another 1,000 million meetings. I'm aware that we're never really going to, that an hour is only an hour. But I'm hopeful. I certainly feel like there's been a lot of insights here that have really been useful for me as someone that's running a venue, and I hope for other people that are there. It is a conversation that will carry on, and I certainly will carry on having it with these panelists, I'm sure, offline, but also we're always open to more of these questions. And if anybody does want to get in touch with myself direct, I think my details are there, or anyone else to carry on this conversation, I am more than up for that and for keeping this going. But I'd like to thank Udi, Nick, Pauline and Inshal for joining me today and for giving up their time. Thanks for everyone that has come and attended, and I do hope that this is, as the Heritage Month should be the start of or the end of an 11th month, that this is the start of a conversation that can continue. So thank you very much indeed, and I don't know what the social media shout outs for the UNIfy Festival are, but I am aware that there are some more really incredible events before the end of this week. So thanks to UNIfy for hosting us. Thanks again to everyone for being here, and hopefully we'll all meet up again soon as well. Thank you.